tell the guys, we're thin but mighty. Anybody that's ever asked about our program over the last few years, I've been saying the same thing. And
Princeton's always been a tough football team. One thing about us is we're going to play tough. We love to hit. Hitting is like preached, and it's like the gospel in Princeton.
I don't want to have all these rules and all these things that you got to try and memorize. Just the word all in. All in.
There was a lot of, lessons being learned. But I got a group of guys who want it, and the biggest thing is sometimes they just don't know how.
It was certainly emotional, no doubt about it. It always is between us and Ocean City.
I don't like losing. The kids don't like losing. And I don't want to lose to the same team over and over and over again. We want to win a state championship.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Cal 101 right here on Cape Atlantic Live. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. With me today is new Pleasantville boys basketball coach Frank Turner. Coach, a pleasure to talk to you. New role for you this year. I'm excited to see what you guys put out on the floor. I'll start out. What has this offseason, this whole whirlwind been like for you now that the season's about a week and a half away?
Yeah, this summer was pretty interesting because we probably had a consistent maybe 5 to 6 guys because a lot of our guys played football, player played soccer. We were expecting another player who was a volleyball star. So most of the guys on the team, and we had another guy playing track. So we was quite small with numbers this summer, but the kids worked extremely hard. And once they came in now, after the tryouts, the kids saw how developed or how much better they got over the summer.
I love hearing that. Yeah, this for you is a new challenge. Of course, there was a big deal made about you going to Pleasantville due to your time, back when you played in high school over at Atlantic City, just the impact that you had on the communities in the surrounding area as a player. Now as a coach, what's this perspective shift been like for you now, leading this program, looking to make it a new era of Pleasantville basketball?
I mean, of course it's an adjustment coming to Pleasantville, being an Atlantic City kid, but I always tell everybody, Atlantic City and Pleasantville are one of the same. You either have a cousin, a grandmother, an uncle, a best friend. We all hang in the same crowds, but, obviously it is a little different culture-wise, but it hasn't been hard adjusting. I think Antoine Dozier, my head assistant, and now the new assistant, Armin Kane, who's a Pleasantville guy, they've made it easy. They understand the kids. They know the kids since they've been young, especially Coach Dozier. And I think along with myself, just knowing how to teach it's been not going to say an easy process, but it hasn't been so difficult.
Do you lean on your staff a lot? I'm glad you mentioned those guys pretty early on. What's it like working with those guys? Again, you both had college basketball experience. You were, legends around the area, and obviously, playing professionally as well. What's it like to kind of bounce off each other? Maybe it's ideas, schemes, or maybe just even things for your culture of your team as well.
A head coach is only as good as his assistant coaches. So to have Antoine Dozier, who is, like you said, a legend in Pleasantville, plenty of points, understands the game, knows how to teach defense very well. It's been a huge help. Then having Armin Kane, who's another player from the area, who went under the radar his entire career and really got it out the mud and became a professional basketball player. So just having them has been a very, very easy process. And I'm thankful to have 2 coaches like that.
So it does help that you have coaches like that at your side, helping you out along the sidelines, on the bench, and, of course, in practice. When you talk about this team that, again, did make a playoff appearance last year, but, again, there's a lot of transition with the new staff for this Pleasantville team, which people do remember that Pleasantville basketball has had many years of great success. It has gone in waves. So when you talk about the transition with you and your staff compared to last year and getting these kids to take that next step in terms of development, especially with a lot of veteran kids back, what's that been like so far for you guys?
It's been smooth. It was actually better than I thought it would be because, let's just be honest, the area and sometimes South Jersey, the development with kids is not very great. So, having a bunch of football players, a soccer player, track player, getting them in, and the development process has been very, very smooth. They're giving in. We've put emphasis on changing the culture as far as just being accountable in every way, and the kids are giving in. I think the more and more that they see the difference in how they're being taught, they're like, oh no, this is going to go good. So it's been a smooth process with that.
So when you talk about that smooth process, as far as the preseason is concerned, again, you guys, along with a lot of other teams, are opening up within the next about week and a half or so to begin this new campaign. What's really stood out to you about these preseason practices and workouts? Is there anything that's maybe a little bit different than last year in terms of how these kids are actually playing basketball, their tenacity, physicality? What really has stood out to you mostly so far?
Really, their ability to pick up on the stuff. And just them giving in. I'm a firm believer that most of the kids in this area haven't been taught basketball. So the way that we're breaking everything down for them to get things through our concepts, it's been a smooth process. So now, we put everything together. They're giving in, they're working hard, and they're understanding what it takes to actually win.
When they understand what it takes to actually win, you come from a long line of a lot of winning, of course, being a part of some historic Atlantic City teams going back about 20 years ago now. The 05 state title really stands out to people from this area, of course. Do you go back in your own head and say, this is how we did it back then and we can use similar concepts now? Or is it, I had big game experience, I can give them that, but we still have to change a lot of things to maybe reach those heights in the modern game of basketball, 20 years later?
For sure, it's how can I put it? I can say it's been everything tied in. I definitely went back to how my coach Gene Allen prepared us for conditioning. I brought that over to the school. Antoine Dozier is big on conditioning. He was one of the coaches that didn't even want to bring the ball out, but we all had our conversations and we figured out how to get them conditioned, and also, just the way of teaching basketball, the way the game is today. So I try not to be the militant guy, but we definitely have to be hard on them to make them understand everything correlates to life. So, if you work hard here, it's going to carry over to when you're in the classroom, to when you're going for the job in your future, or God willing, they're able to pursue a college career or professional career.
When you talk about that hard coaching and, being a former athlete myself, at least, I wasn't the best athlete, but I always appreciated the hard coaching because they're trying to do what's best for you, and then not maybe skate that gray line or that thin line, I should say. How have the kids responded to maybe some hard coaching on some of those dogged days during the preseason where it's like, oh my God, we're 90 minutes into this. Here comes more conditioning because we missed 5 shots or we're not getting the concepts right. How have they taken to some of that hard coaching?
See, I might be giving up my tips on coaching here, but we found a balance. The world is hard, so we can't be too soft on them. But we also realize that a lot of these kids these days, they need to be affirmed. So we're being hard on them at times, let them know we're not punishing you. Yeah. You mess up here, you have to understand it's a cost for certain things. So if you're taking care of the ball, you're making free throws, you're on time for practice, you're making sure you're doing everything in class, your grades are right. We just making sure that they're being held accountable at all costs.
As far as some of your players are concerned, I mentioned before how there's a veteran squad back for you, so you have a lot of experience to work with. And I'm sure there's some new guys as well where you're kind of trying to fine-tune their skills as well. But I know you mentioned Nasir Naji was one of them. I know Samad Johnson, as you mentioned, alluded to before, Amir McGraw from transferring in from AC, who has really maybe taken ownership maybe of that leadership position or the captain position. I don't know if you named captains yet, but how are these guys emerging as the veteran leaders, so to speak, on this Pleasantville team?
Well, I wouldn't say we really have veteran leadership because Nasir Naji, who's a junior, he didn't play much last year under the old coach. Samad Johnson, I'm not really sure how much he played. Who else is Jermaine is a senior. We don't really have a lot of varsity playing experience, but they're all holding each other accountable. We don't have one individual leader right now. I think Samad Johnson, his voice and just his stature, when he speaks, everybody listen. Nasir, he's very adamant about, cheering up his teammates and picking them up at times. I think Takis, he's a hard worker. And through his hard work, everybody sees that. Amir McGraw is a transfer. I'm trying to get him to figure out how to be a better leader as a point guard now. Samaj Dozier, he's a quiet guy. He works, but, he's not really an outspoken person. So, he works and people follow. But again, it's just a total team effort on holding each other accountable. We haven't named any captains yet, but I think everybody's going to hold their own weight where, I always say in practice, I heard a quote, the sorry teams, they don't communicate. Good teams, only the coaches communicate. But great teams is when the players communicate. And I think they're picking up on that.
I like hearing that, and it almost makes it like a basketball team can be a much better cohesive unit. As you mentioned, great teams have the players communicate. So when you notice that in practice, do you feel, especially for a team that's transitioning from one staff to the next and a team that, wants to get back to these long playoff runs and a lot more success in the Cape Atlantic League and in these South Jersey brackets when it comes to sectional titles or something along those lines, when you see your players communicating like that, even on, let's just say, a random Tuesday in the preseason, when you see that, do you say, okay, there's a chance now early on we're going to have a lot of success because these players are, as you mentioned before, are holding each other accountable?
It takes time, man. So when you hear it, you have to applaud them. So we're not going to turn into a 21 or 22 win team in just the span of a month. You know what I mean? So you got to take the small wins. A lot of people, they consider a successful season having a whole bunch of wins and not too many losses. But for me, in my first year with them, actually teaching them the game, you got to take the small wins first and just see how it comes along. I'm not worried about making a deep run in the playoffs right now. I'm worried about changing their mindsets and changing their thoughts on the basketball court.
I like that. Do you have any small wins that you can check off so far? I know, again, for a process like this, there's always steps, and it's the offseason, it's the preseason, then it's the regular season. All right, what do you do? What are you doing in the classroom? Can we get to the postseason? All right, then how do we prepare for 25, 26 now? Have you seen any small wins so far as we approach the regular season?
Yes, I have one major one, but just one small one today in practice. Just teaching them to take their time and not rush all of the time. And then, just constantly explaining, do it this way, do it that way. And then, today, unfortunately, some of my coaches, they had to leave. So I pulled them into the huddle and I told them to run something a specific way. And again, accountability. I told them to run it. If they didn't score, I would run. They come in, they run the play exactly how I asked them. And then they look up like, they saw Jesus Christ, God himself, So it's like, that's a small win for me, knowing that they're like, okay, he's teaching us.
Yeah.
But my biggest win, I hate to put the pressure on him and make it just about him, but Nasir Naji was the biggest win for me this summer.
Yeah.
His attitude and his approach to the game, I wouldn't say it was bad. He just didn't know how to control his emotions.
Right.
And to see where he went from in the beginning of the summer to now, where he's holding his teammates accountable, he's checking himself, he's catching himself before I even say something to him. So little wins like that is huge for me. Because again, I'm not basing my success or my coaching staff success off of wins and losses.
Right.
It's about small development and then turning things up by the notch, day by day by day.
It's interesting you say that because it's hard, I guess, to quantify exact success depending upon which program you're talking to. It could be a rebuilding program, it could be a historic program, it could be a program in the middle. It seems like right now, as you approach even just the first game in your tenure with you and your staff, those small wins seem to be adding up, and that almost is like the larger goal for this program, and then everything else kind of falls into place. Do I kind of have that right?
Yeah, so for me, what we're doing is we're just making sure that we're just staying locked in every day. We're not, again, we do want to win.
Right.
We're not saying that we don't want to take things to a further notch, or we're not looking to win every night. The goal is to definitely put wins up and to be successful.
As far as what you can do for this community, because, just looking at Pleasantville, again, I mentioned that roller coaster ride for the athletic programs. Football was at a lot of highs a couple of years ago. Basketball's been there before. There's been a lot of programs for Pleasantville that have taken that roller coaster ride where a few years of success and then a few years down, and then it goes back in waves. As far as what you can do, and I'm talking a little bit more off the court now for Pleasantville and the community, because you're from the area, you're well aware of the area in terms of Atlantic City and Pleasantville.
My son's coming in. Sorry about that.
No, I like that. Hey, little guest spot. That's awesome. It's kind of related too, as far as the culture is concerned. What do you want to do for this community as a head coach? And I can only imagine you're here for the long haul and say, all right, not only do we want to mold basketball players, mold good young men, and eventually lead it to maybe a lot of wins and a lot of titles one day. What can that do ultimately for the school and the community, and for obviously for the kids who are eventually going to come play high school basketball under you in a few years?
So the good thing about having somebody like Antoine Dojo on the staff is not even just about the kids themselves. It's about the community. He wants to do some major things that I'm not going to speak about right now, but it's basically embracing some of the older players that was there and, just changing the narrative about Pleasantville basketball players, that they can grasp the concepts of offensive and the defensive schemes, and it's not just run and gun. We've had long conversations about changing everything about the culture. So I think people will see it. They'll see the change in the kids. And then eventually the area will see how much the Pleasantville community is going to come together.
When the community comes together, and I could see that's one of your ultimate goals, at least for year one, and then obviously beyond. So I wanted to rewind you real quick and kind of wrap up this conversation with this. What really enticed you to take this job? I believe you were hired earlier this summer around May or June. What really drew you to this opportunity when they said, hey, we're looking at you, or was it a mutual thing where I want this opportunity? How did this all really come about a few months ago, which led you to where you are now?
Just myself. I threw my name in a few places, but again, I think Pleasantville is just like home. I've been raised and taught by a lot of coaches through the entire Atlantic County area. So I played a lot of basketball within Pleasantville, and when the opportunity was there, I went for the interview, and thank God they hired me. It wasn't something that was a well thought out process. I put my name in, the interview happened, I was hired, and now I'm here. I'm just thankful to have the coaching staff that I have, and I hope that we can really change this program around.
Well, the program seems like it can definitely be changed under your leadership and as well as your staff. Home opener, I believe, in the season opener 10 days from now against Holy Spirit in Pleasantville.
Yes, December 17th. So if anybody's watching this,
that's gonna be
make sure it's packed. Come out, support the kids, cheer for us when we're up, cheer for us when we're down, and just watch the culture change.
I'm excited to see that gym packed in Pleasantville High School. Coach Frank Turner with me here on Cal 101, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. Coach, good luck this season. Looking forward to watching you guys on the hardwood. Appreciate your time today. And once again, good luck this year. We're really looking forward to watching the Greyhounds this year.
Thank you. Appreciate you for the interview, and hope you come out to a few games and, you can see the change in the program.
We're looking forward to seeing it in action in person for sure. Cal 101 right here on Cape Atlantic Live, presented by Ulmer's Appliance Service. We'll see you next time.